check. Mike, 2 2 2 2. Roll reel 3 3 5. So there was a little bit of humor that I came up with over and over for the thousands of days since I was like 17 and a half. I said, well, the radio show started in about 2006 when you moved in, and but for a long while he was practicing to be an entertainer across the wilds, and when he was finally in school again, and said check check, when he was finally in school again, they figured, well, you're not really a public celebrity, and you're not really endorsed, and etc. As far as now, we kind of told the whole world, you're checked out, and you won't be physically capable enough until you graduate, and then after and etc. So 2008 came along. There's the Drew Carlson story, and eventually they put together. There was a conflict in New York City, and he was part of the NYPD anti-terrorism task force that successfully detained tourists, and etc. But he was wounded, and his Purple Heart's pending 10 to 15 years med leave, unpaid. Well, he might get paid at the end if he recovers, and etc. So those particular fertilizer bombs didn't explode in that particular, what he calls quote unquote a skyscraper, which is hilarious for people that lived in New York City. This is, they could call that a skyscraper. That's only like a 85-story apartment building. You're not from around here, are you? Anyway, so there was that, and then there was a little quote that I came up with. It was you're like, it's between the ages of like 16 and 24 or something like that, and they says Ma says to her son, or a mother says to her seed, whether, but whilst young, like a teenage and adolescence, a teenage, or a 20s, at some point, non-alcoholic, hasn't been drinking, forever, and says, have you been drinking again? He goes, nah, I've only been drinking what I've been fighting. Yeah, and she's like, oh, shuts her trap, like, fighting's much worse than drinking. Why didn't I ask him if he'd been fighting again? It's like, oh yeah, he'd been boxing since the age of 5 in all sorts of sports and schools, and prep military sort of deal. And it was supposed to be a Green Party, yellow submarine, something, just a taxi driver. But they said, if the submarine gets painted blue, he's supposed to act like a Navyman and things, because the submarine program, as far as color yellow, is kind of brand new as far as these days and for us. And um, so there was that, and then there was like, there was a scene with, when are you going to take off those stinky leathers, Mr. Morrison? Wait a minute, have you been taking LSD again? He goes, no, I only told you, I only take acid when I've been drinking, or something like that. I thought that was kind of cool, but I didn't see that until I fully through, as far as officially and like on my own, until about like 2004. It was just not a thing that I was into. It's like, I don't really want to watch The Doors. I don't really like The Doors. I know I had the T-shirt on when I was young, and I liked Riders on the Storm and Driving in the Rain, and a couple of other songs. But as far as learning about The Doors, they were kind of not so good overall, and they seemed like some sort of competitive something like Led Zeppelin, which I also wasn't into. I mean, if I didn't know anything and musically, I mean, as far as like why the bands came up, and it's like all that. So, well, we'll just call it rock and roll. We'll call it heavy metal. We'll call it and it swept the country, and then they came in greater numbers. But why? Or something similar. So, and it was insulting. It was insulting to the brand new, and it was very Jimi Hendrix. All of anything competition with this Green Party, civil rights, Disney sanctioned presidential favorite, anything under all sorts of, and you look into it, so wow, that was lies. Wow, that was lies. Was Jimi Hendrix really lies though? No, that was like he had ideas to call it blues rock, or speed something, or whatever, and magic. It was like, so the whole Jimi Hendrix thing, he was nothing. No, absolutely nothing to do. He put together his own music style himself. And that was Jerry's impression of the flying saucer that fell in his backyard, which was the only deal. And then besides that, everything else was taught through Disneyland, California, 1954. American folk, and he made renditions, and they picked things up across the way. What do you know about folk and folk and folk and folk? And I can play like this, and they always like, wow, that's like brand new, never been heard before, and etc. That's what they said in Disneyland, and now we have contracts for here and this and all across, as long as we get to New York. It'll be approved, and they'll all pipe up all at once, and we'll save the world, sort of deal. But of course, and some of the band still plays. You know, there's Bill Krusman, Mickey Hart, Bob Weir. I think that's about it. Well, Phil Lesh, who has never done the Dead and Company thing, and I've already said before, he's like John Mayer's the new Jerry Garcia. I'd rather not do the Dead and Company. He did GD50 under the impression that was going to be the last one. He kind of liked Trey Anastasio from Phish, as well as most of the surviving members of the rest of the band, except for maybe Bob. Not a joke. So, or as far as I can say, to the best of my abilities, you'd have to watch show 1 through 100 to get in touch with Chickity Check Check 2 2 2 2 1.